You're listening to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, episode number 174. Living in the past is not time well spent. However, pausing to reflect on God's goodness in our lives gives hope and reminds us that He is near. Join me as we take a walk down memory lane and reflect on the top 15 episodes from season 1 of Faith Breathed Hope. Join me today as I bring back one of the most meaningful interviews for me personally. Listen as I speak with loving father, devoted husband, and Dollhouse Maker Brendan Hoffman on the Dollhouse. If you are currently grieving the loss of a loved one or know someone who is, Life After Losing a Loved One, How to Turn Grief into Hope, Strength, and Purpose was written to help you move forward in your great pain. In the book, I walk you through the grieving process so that you understand thoughts that sit alongside grief and provide practical steps to encourage you to process your emotional journey while caring for your physical, spiritual, and mental needs. You can grab Life After Losing a Loved One, How to Turn Grief into Hope, Strength, and Purpose on Amazon, along with the first grief book in our children's series based on the fruit of the Spirit, Adventures of Lily and Izzy B, The Imagination Journey. Look for the second book of the Adventures of Lily and Izzy B, The Gift of Love, coming soon. Welcome to the Faith Breathed Hope podcast, where we gain inspiration and motivation from others who share their touching stories of renewing hope and discovering purpose in any circumstance. I'm your host, Christina Reisinger, and today we will be encouraged by another tremendously inspirational topic that will embolden you to release fear, begin taking small steps forward, and move into your God-given purpose to live and serve in this life. Join me for today's story. Welcome, Brendan. I'm so happy to have you here on the Faith Breathed Hope podcast. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, and thank you for having me.
So today we are going to talk about creating a legacy after loss, but I'd like for you to spend a moment telling the audience about your personal story.
Well, my story started back in October of 2008. As we talked briefly before, I am a diehard college football fan, and my daughter Dawn came up to me during a football game on a Saturday and said she had this problem. Well, when I found out what this problem was, that football game went by the wayside. We took her, or she took herself to a hospital. She was 28, took herself to a hospital in January of 8, and they told her that she had a hernia. In May, this hernia per se was growing, and she went to a second hospital, and they did a check on her, and they told her it was a hernia. Well, by the time she told me about it in October of 8, this thing was about the size of a baseball in her right groin. So we said no. We took her to another hospital. They did a biopsy on a Saturday. On Monday, it came back, and they told her it was stage 3 melanoma. And they gave her 3 to 5 years to live. Well, during that time, she was discharged and set on a program for radiation and all. And for the next, she started getting all these severe headaches. And on November the 7th, we took her back to the hospital. They did a CAT scan on her brain, and they found that she had 8 tumors on her brain. It had already metastasized, and they gave her 6 months to a year to live.
Wow.
She was divorced. She had 2 children. She had a 3-year-old little girl and a 8-year-old little boy. And Dawn and I were very close. Everybody said that we were like twins. We used to finish each other's sentences. So I asked her to come home to live. I wanted to take care of her. Well, she turned the kids over to her ex-husband because she didn't want them to see her going through all this treatment. So she came home, and while she was home, we did a lot of soul searching on the lanai in the back. We talked all hours of the day, all hours of the night. And during that short amount of time that we spent, I made 36 promises to her. One of them was,
Wow.
yeah, some were big promises and some were little. But in April of 9, she entered the hospice program. And every time they adjusted her medication, she had to go as an inpatient for 3 days. So one day we were in as an inpatient, and we were walking around the halls and came up into this little TV reading room that little kids were playing in. And up on the top shelf was this old beat up dollhouse. And she asked this little girl if she wanted to play with it. And she told my daughter that it's broken and it's not worth playing with. Well, Dawn looked at me as we walked out of the room and she says, "You need to build one and replace that." And I looked at her, I said, "I can't build no dollhouse." And she says, "You can." I said, "No, I can't." And she says, "You can and you will." So, all right. Well, we didn't think nothing of it at the time. Well, then we were sitting out on the lanai one day, and she says, I want you to write after I'm gone." I said, "I don't write." And she says, "You need to write. You need to write your thoughts and feelings down." I said, "I can't do that." She says, "You're a typical male that show their feelings." I said, "If it doesn't pertain to a baseball, football, or basketball, I can't write nothing." And she says, "Yes, you can and you will." Well, a couple of weeks later went by, and she said to me, she goes, "Daddy, I got your first paper to write." I said, "Okay, what is it?" She goes, "Nobody on this earth knows me better than you, and nobody on this earth loves me more than me, you." I said, "You got that right." She goes, "Good. I want you to write my eulogy." I about fell off my chair.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, and I told her, I said, "I can't do that." She goes, "You can and you will." Well, I did. Well, then she says, "I want you to continue to write and write your thoughts and feelings down." Well, that's where my book came out. But one of them also was the dollhouse. She says, "After I'm gone, I want you to build dollhouses." She says, "However many, it's going to be up to you. And give them to them at Christmas time. Give them to them however you want. You can give them to them yourself, or you can give them to hospice. You can do whatever you want." I said, "Okay." Well, I did 8 a year. I have been doing 8 a year. Matter of fact, this past Christmas, I've given 82 dollhouses to hospice, and these are pretty good sized dollhouses. These are really, to be honest with you, but I start them the day after the 4th of July, and I finish them Thanksgiving weekend, and that's 12 to 16-hour days, 7 days a week that I work on them. But I enjoy them. I thoroughly enjoy it. It brings memories.
Mm-hmm.
On the first week of December, I get a hold of Patrice at Pete's Carrot Hospice off of Sunbeam, and we set up a date and time, and they come pick them up, and we meet them there, and I turn them over to Patrice, and then a week later, she gives them out to the kids. Now, these kids that get them, they ask me how I wanted them distributed. I told them I wanted them first to go to terminally ill children. I said, then after the terminally ill, then maybe a sister or someone from a terminally ill. And they have done what I asked. Many a times they asked if I'd show up and give it to them. I said, no, I don't want to do that. It would break my heart. There was a time, it was Christmas time of 8. There was Christmas time of 18. There was 127 boys and 118 girls under the age of 16 that was terminally ill in Northeast Florida. That is a lot of children. That is a lot of kids.
There's a lot of children.
That's a lot of heartache.
Yes.
And but that's my story with my dollhouses. I'm going to try to continue to do those dollhouses. I retired 4 years ago, and I had a neighbor who was living next to me. He was renting this house next to me until his house was being built, and he was really all excited about the story that I did with these dollhouses. Well, when I retired, he came over. I'm upstairs in my man cave here, and we're throwing darts and having a couple beers, and he asked me about the dollhouses. I said, I'm gonna have to slow down a little bit on them now. I said, I'm retired, and the cost of them is a little bit high and all that. Well, he owns a business here in Nocatee. He pays everything. He finances.
Oh, wow.
He not only finances it, Christina, he sends his employees to my house during the workday to help me.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Every morning he sends them from 9 to noon. They come and they help me out. And that's a tremendous help there.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to stop doing them with help like that. But and I know in the 10 years that I've been doing this, and the 82 families that have received a dollhouse, 80 families, because 2 of them are on display, 80 families that have received them. I've only met 3 families, and you're one of them.
Yeah, and go ahead.
And you're one.
Yeah.
I've turned down several, but for some reason, something told me not to turn you down. Something told me not to.
Well, and for the audience listening, that is where this is a very personal story for me. I absolutely love what Brendan is doing, just because he's doing it and because it is a heartfelt project, something that is personal between him and his daughter, but also something that he is really reaching out to these families in a really hard time, a difficult time when they are going through these situations. But in 2016, we received one of these amazingly beautiful dollhouses from Brendan, and we received it. The funny thing was, and I don't mean funny, haha, I mean ironically, we received it on the day that our daughter Isabella passed away. They had called me from hospice, and they said, we want to bring you something. It was around Christmas time, and hospice does amazing things for those families during Christmas. We had the fire station gives Christmas parties, and they collect a ton of toys for these families, and because that's the last thing that you're really thinking about when you have a sick child is you want to honor your other kids, of course, but you have so much more on your mind that you're dealing with when you're just trying to keep your child alive. And so they gave me a call, and they said, hey, we want to bring this thing over. And I didn't even know what it was. And for me, hospice was a dirty word, because that, to me, that just meant death. We had been fighting this thing called trisomy 18 since we found out in week 12 of utero. And all we had been told was that she was incompatible with life. And so instead of expecting Isabella to live, we did that through prayer and through our belief in the Lord. But instead of expecting her to live, we were always, just waiting on that phone call, waiting on, that that moment. Every single time the phone rang, I just cringed. My insides died, and it's just a lot of anticipatory grief. So when the hospice called me and they said, hey, I want to give you this, I didn't want it. And I didn't even know what it was, but they said, no, we're gonna bring this to you. I think that you should have it. You need it, and that kind of thing. And so these two men came to the door, and they had this amazingly gorgeous dollhouse. And I'm a very girly girl, so when I was a child, this would be just a dream. Like, I could have never imagined. My parents would have never been able to afford a dollhouse like this for me. And so, there's part of me that wanted to enjoy it because it was just so beautiful. But then there was a part of me that was terrified of this gift. And ironically enough, I guess that it was Christmas, and my husband and I had, we went to a Christmas party that night because it was probably one of the only times that we had been able to get out. And she was 10 and a half months old. So it was over a year that we've been able to do anything. And so we said, well, we're going to enjoy this. And then we got a call saying on the way home that we were meeting the ambulance. And so anyways, I won't go through all that story, but she did end up passing. And the next morning we spent the night in the hospital. And, the dollhouse was something for me that I really, I could never put into words because it was so special. And I didn't allow my other children to touch it, even though I have a little girl who's 5. I was terrified that they would break it. And for me, it was for Isabella. And so I'm very protective of that dollhouse. And, this year, I had always wondered about Brendan. I didn't know really who he was. And I had talked to hospice a couple of times over the last several years, wanting to know who this man was that did these special things. And 3 years, I believe it was, had gone by. And I finally reached out again because there was an article, I think, on Facebook showing the houses that you did in 2019 for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And so, well, maybe maybe these people can help me figure out who this man is. And, they sent me a message, and Brendan was willing to talk to me. And so we had a phone conversation that was just super lovely. We both had a chance to talk about our daughters, and cried a little bit, and, shared a lot of personal things. And I cannot tell you how grateful from me being on the recipient end, not just as a podcast host, how much that was so meaningful. And it still is. And so I am so thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you.
You make so much a difference in people's lives. And I want to talk to you about the promises that you that time that you sat on the porch and talked to your daughter and you made those promises. What does that time mean to you? I can assume that a lot of people don't get that time, and it seems like it was very, very special. It was probably stressful, I'm guessing, because there was a lot that you had to promise. But I can tell you right now, hearing you talk about your daughter, I already love her, being that she tells you, don't say I can't, because she says you can. You can. She sounds like somebody who's super amazing.
Christina, you can look at it one of two ways. After I retired from the Navy, I went to work for the state of Florida, and I worked for the Department of Children and Families. And I was sitting in my office one day, and I had this worker who worked for me. She came up to me. She had lost a daughter on Christmas Eve of 2005. She worked at Longhorn Steakhouse there in Regency, and a girlfriend of hers' car broke down on the expressway. She pulled over to help her, and she got hit by a car and killed. This was in December of 5. In August of 6, her daughter was at a wedding in Birmingham, Alabama, and at the reception just dropped over dead from a brain aneurysm.
Oh, wow.
This woman had 2 children. She lost both children in 9 months. You know, she sat in my office and we cried. And she said, Brendan, you're lucky that you got to spend time with your daughter. I didn't get to say goodbye to mine. I didn't get to say that I loved them. And I said to this lady, you're right. I am. I said, however, I said, no one has it rougher than anybody. You didn't have it any rougher than me. I didn't have it any rougher than you. I said, but however, you didn't watch your daughter deteriorate and die before your eyes. So there is, I know what she was saying, but then she realized what I was saying. You know, I watched my daughter go from a very active person to nothing. To where this cancer went from one place in her right groin to 9 locations in a matter of months and killed her in a matter of months. So, you know, nobody has it rougher than the other. Losing a child is rough enough, whether you got to say goodbye to him or not. That is the hurt, the sorrow.
Yeah. You know, and you're very right in the fact that, and this is something that we tell people all the time, is that you shouldn't compare in grief. Everybody has different experiences. Everybody has different personalities.
Yes.
And so, you know, one person's relationship, it looks different than another. And like you said, that might not be something that occurs to other people, because you might think, well, you know, you had more chance to say goodbye, but then, yeah, you saw her, like you said, deteriorate. So it's almost like a double-edged sword, I would guess, where you are thankful for the time. But
yes,
you had
I was very grateful, and the conversations we had were unforgettable, and they you know, 36 promises. I mean, some of them I won't go over, but some of them, you know, was one the book, some was the dollhouses. But I was a workaholic. And when I was a workaholic, I put something very important on the back burner. What I put on the back burner was God. Church. I didn't have time for God. I had to work. I didn't have time for church. I had to work. I didn't have time to read the Bible. I had to work. I had to work because I wanted to work. So I put God behind me on that back burner. And one day she said to me, she goes, you know, Daddy, I'm going to heaven. I said, I do. And I will see you there. And she said, maybe. Boy, she caught me off guard. I said, what do you mean, maybe? She goes, if you don't bring God back into your heart, you won't see me ever. So not only did she open my eyes, she was very wise.
Definitely. She was very wise. She was implementing that wisdom for you to, you know, a lot of people don't really like thinking about how loss helps them grow.
No.
It's something that can create a lot of anger in people, because, you know, you really don't care about that growth, especially in the beginning. You just want your loved one back. But the truth is that if you welcome it, if you allow yourself to receive it, God can do beautiful things in your life from that loss.
Well, you're right, but you have to accept it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I wouldn't. You know, the griefs of death. the one that I would not ever accept. I would not accept the God. I wouldn't. I had to be at work at 5 in the morning. I'd go for a walk at 3 o'clock in the morning. This one day, it was February the 10th, 2010. Jacksonville had 28 degrees that day in the morning. Wind chill 22. I'm out walking. And all I did for 45 minutes is I literally cursed God out. I mean, cursed him out. I told him he wasn't worth it. You know what? That he didn't give a damn. He didn't do this and he didn't do that. I was lucky I didn't get struck by lightning in 28-degree weather. I went home. I got ready for work. I'm the first one in that building. I unlock it. And where I work wasn't in the best of locations off the expressway. I don't know if you're familiar with Arlington Expressway.
Yeah, a little.
And there's an apartment right next to it that we've always had problems with. But anyways, I went in. I set the alarm. I went upstairs to my office. And when I got up there, I realized I left my phone and my checkbook in the car. We're in my truck. So I came back down, and there was this man, had this blue hood on, zipped up, going through the trash can right next to the door. I pounded on the door and told him to leave. He didn't lift his head. He didn't do nothing. He just turned, walked down the steps, and walked to the left and toward the expressway. I went down to my truck, and when I got to my truck, I turned and I looked at this guy. He was at the corner of the building. We were about 90 feet apart. No cars in the parking lot but mine. About 90 feet. And I've never in my life did this. I yelled to him. I told him, "Come here." He turned around. He started walking toward me, head down. He got to me. I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out $10. And I handed him $10. I said, "Go across the street, get yourself a hot cup of coffee and something to eat." He took the money. And as soon as he took the money, he lifted his head, and our eyes just locked. He said, "Thank you, my son. Thank you." Well, he turned, I turned. It wasn't 5 seconds that it took me to get my checkbook and my phone. I turned around, and there was nobody there. It was gone.
Wow.
Gone. And I thought, I went up to my desk, up my office, and I sat at my desk thinking, what did just happen? Unbelievable.
Wow.
But I still did not believe. Still not believe. September 2nd, 2010. 1 year after Dawn was buried. September 2nd was her birthday. We buried her on 26th of August. You know how they say the first of everything is you grieve the most?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we just got done burying her, so we didn't really grieve. I didn't grieve for her birthday. It was the following one. Well, I went up to my boss on the 2nd of September. It was a Thursday. And I said, "Mike," I says, it was 9 o'clock in the morning. I said, "You mind if I take the rest of the day off?" Didn't tell him why. He said, "Brendan, I got to go to Gainesville. You need to run the office for me." I said, "All right." So I left. I went back to my office. I stopped and I told my secretary, I said, "Karen, I'm going to take an early lunch. Maybe a little bit late, but won't be long." She said, "All right." So I left my building at the expressway and I went to Jacksonville Memory Gardens over in Orange Park. And I had on this Ohio State shirt, and Dawn used to say one of two things: "I like you in those colors," or you look good in those colors. One of those two, she always said. Well, I had an Ohio State pullover shirt on that day. And I stood over her grave and I cried my eyes out, telling her, you promised me if I needed help, you would help me. I said, girl, I need your help today. I said, I don't think I can make it. And Christina, I honest to God didn't think I could. So about 10 minutes later, I get in my truck and I pull out of this cemetery and I get down there on Blanding and Wells. And I look over to my right and they had just opened up not too long ago a Home Depot. And I said, well, I'm going to stop there instead of stopping on the way home from work. So I went in there and all Home Depots are basically laid out the same. So I went back to get what I needed. And when I came back, they had one person working the register and they had the self-checkout. I started walking to that lady, and this lady at that checkout, she had the most beautiful smile I have ever seen in my entire life. It just glowed. It was beautiful. So I get up to the counter, I put the stuff down. She goes, you look good in those colors. I looked up at her and I said, what did you say? She put her hand on my hand and she says, everything is all right. Everything will be okay today. I was shocked.
Oh, wow.
So I gave her my money. I picked up my 2 items and I started walking out the truck. I get halfway out to the truck and I stop. I looked up in the sky and I said, that woman just said everything I said 10 minutes ago. I put my stuff in the truck. I went back in. There was this lady, another lady, different lady, that was putting the cash register into the box to open up. I said, where was that black lady that was just here? She goes, what black lady? I said, there was a black lady that was just working here. She goes, we don't have anybody here by that.
Oh, wow. That gives me chills. That is an amazing story. I guess you would call it divine intervention, maybe.
Yes.
I work with a lot of people who say that, God gives us signs. And, I also work, you had said that you cussed and talked to God and, kind of told him what you thought. And there's so many people that after they lose someone very special, they decide that they don't believe anymore. They blame God. And this is often a topic that comes up when I'm talking to people. And I believe that no matter what you go through, God can give you that peace. But like we said earlier, you have to receive it. You have to be willing and open to receiving that. It is a choice that we make. It is not a choice to be in the place that we're in, to lose somebody that we love very much. It is not a choice to experience our circumstances that cause us great pain, but it is a choice to receive that peace. It is a choice to walk forward and to continue to live our lives. And it is certainly a choice to serve others. And, I don't know if it was after you and I had talked, but it wasn't, too long ago that I realized by helping other people, it wasn't necessarily just about those other people. We are 3 years out from losing our own daughter, and I decided to help people with their grief. But I thought that, it was just me. Hey, I can help you because I've been through this kind of thing. But then the more and more that I have been working through this, I realized it is continuing to heal me. And I also
Therapeutic.
Do what?
It's therapeutic.
It is. It is. And also, whether you're a believer or not, I am a believer and you are a believer as well now. But it really hones that relationship that you have with the Lord. And by really getting a better relationship with God, you are able to serve people better. It's very cyclical. It just goes on in a circle. I help people, it helps me. I continue to work on my relationship with the Lord, then I'm able to help and serve people even more. And then that's all healing for all parties involved. Isn't that really cool?
Everyone that I've known that has lost a loved one, it was God's fault.
Yeah.
Didn't have to have that. God didn't have to make that happen. God could have cured him. Mm-hmm. God could have. And one of the things that I always hated to hear was, well, God had a plan. Oh, I want to know what that plan is. Well, you're not part of that plan. You don't need to know what that plan is. Well, first thing I'm going to say to God when I see him is, why did he take my daughter? That's what I was thinking for several years. Several years. Then I finally realized, hey, I'm not going to have to ask God. But she's going to be standing right next to me. So people, and I was long before I accepted, God back into my heart. It was 5 years. I blamed God for 5 years. And I'm on 10 and a half. And I hated him. Mm-hmm. He took my baby girl. Mm-hmm. He took the mother of 2 of my grandkids. He did. And I hated him. But boy, I tell you how wrong I was. I was so wrong. And sometimes people have to learn the hard way and the long way with something like that. You could sit down. There's some that you can change. And I had trouble being changed. I had very much trouble. But people like you're perfect for this. Your heart is so strong. Your will is so strong. And I see where you can change a lot of people. What you're doing is wonderful. It is truly wonderful.
Thank you. I just believe that everybody deserves to know that they are not alone. We were created for a purpose, yes, but we were created for each other. And, we all go through things. And the Bible promises us, it has a lot of promises, but it does tell us that we're going to go through a lot of adversity. And, we're not promised to have a perfect life just because we're believers.
Oh, no.
And when the verse that I always cling to, and I don't care if I say this on every single recording that I ever do, but, I have clung to this since Isabella was in the NICU. But, God promises us that we're going to see the goodness. We're going to see his goodness in the land of the living. And, there are a lot of things that we don't want to hear after a loved one dies. We don't want to hear that, there's something good that's going to come out of it, and that was for a reason. We don't want to hear he has a plan. We don't want to hear that we got our miracle. I mean, and it goes on and on and on and on. But the thing is that no matter what happens, we can choose to accept God's peace. And we can choose to allow him to work in our lives, and we can choose to help others through that. And, that word choice, those are fighting words, especially in the beginning. I can remember somebody telling me I was going to help people when Isabella first passed away. And I said, I do not want to help anybody. I just want my daughter back.
Exactly. But look at you now.
I'm sure there are so many other people out there that think that, but that it is very, very true that God can take your brokenness and not to be cliche, but he can work miracles through that, and he can, heal your heart and give you a passion to help others. And when we bring our stories to the forefront and we share with each other our pain, and we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and honest in that pain, then we allow other people to say, okay, you know what? I might be okay because this person is feeling something similar. Now, we're not the same, we're all different as far as our personalities and our experiences, but we can empathize with each other, and we can, really feel and feel like we're not alone when we hear other people's stories. And that's what we want to do here, is share those stories and give people some tools to help them say yes, help them start moving forward and say, I make that choice. And yes, I was angry at God, or I'm not a believer, but I am willing to accept that peace because I need that peace. And I'm going to tell you, folks, that peace is not something that you can humanly achieve. It is from God. That's why it says the peace that surpasses all understanding, because, in my opinion, grief and death defy logic. We know in our brains that it happens, but then when it does happen to someone who we love dearly, our hearts take over.
Oh, yes. That is for sure. That is for sure.
Brendan, I really am so happy and pleased to have you here on Faith Breathed Hope. I don't know if there is a way. It took me almost 3 years to get in touch with you, but do you have any place where people can go if they want to reach out to you, or if they can just, I know that your stories are all over the news. They have been for years, showing these beautiful elaborate dollhouses that you have created. And I'm going to thank your daughter, Dawn, for really pushing you to that, because is there any other place where they can see your work, or you said?
Well, no, there's several people wanted me to do a website. In overall, I probably be made 150 dollhouses. Never sold a one. I've given them to churches. Every little girl in my cul-de-sac has a dollhouse. And, plus the ones at hospice. I don't have any website or anything. I'm old school. I got an old photo album of them, but I need to do something. Too many people are asking. Now, if they go onto my Facebook, where it's got group, it's got in memory of Don Hoffman. I got all my dollhouses on that. They could look on that. But I do need to come up with something better. Too many people are asking about them.
Yeah, and we can provide that link. But I really do. I would love for everybody to see your work. It's just absolutely amazing. And
well, I got some of those. I could come up with the website for that was on the news. I do have some of those. I could give them to you.
Okay, that sounds good. We will post that. And again, I really do appreciate you being here on the podcast. And
I thank you.
And we will talk, I hope, and keep in touch. And thank you, everybody, for listening today. We hope that you continue to be blessed and bless others. And I want to thank you for joining us on Faith Breathed Hope, where you gain inspiration and motivation to renew hope and discover purpose in any circumstance. Please like and share this podcast and give us a review on iTunes. Be blessed.